Hey everyone, welcome to the Anderson Bros Outdoors. I'm Jake, and today we're going to do an unboxing and running of this Element Enduro Zuul trail truck. So stay tuned. Hey everyone, welcome back. As I said, my name is Jake, and today we're going to unbox this trail truck, the Element Enduro Zuul, Z-U-U-L trail truck. Lots of stuff for this morning. Lots of words for this morning. But it's a really cool truck, so let's dive into some of the features real quick before we unbox it. So one of the primary things that sticks out to me is most trail trucks today are straight axle front and rear, or they're portal front and rear. This truck is a little bit different. It is a independent front suspension, and so if you watch any of the off-road trucks that do long races like the King of the Hammers, Baja, things of that nature, some of those classes or some of the trucks in some of those classes have actually switched from being a straight axle front and rear to an IFS, which is independent front suspension with a solid rear. Now, I'm not going to get into why. I will just tell you it has to do with the suspension geometry when you are going through the stroke. So straight axle, the axle will always do this, and IFS will always do this. There's a lot of science behind it, so I'll just leave it at that. So this truck has the independent front suspension that you can see there. Outside of that, it's basically an Ecto. It's an Ecto with the front suspension. I don't know if the wheelbase is the same. I do know that it has the same StealthX transmission. It's got the trailing arm suspension just like the Ecto. It's got the Reedy motor. The other key difference here is that it does have a FlySky 2-in-1 radio and receiver, meaning that the ESC and receiver are all in one. Outside of that, it does have some pretty nifty looking hubs. They are like brake calipers. That's kind of cool. This does have IFS 2, so apparently there is a version 1 and 2, and this is version 2 of IFS. There's a whole lot of features and stuff on the box. I'm not going to go over those. So, kind of taking a stab at some other manufacturers that don't have machine ring and pinion gears, but it does say it does have machine ring and pinion gears. Outside of that, it does look like it is licensed from Camberg. They are a suspension company in real life for one-to-one vehicles. The only other thing I'm going to mention before I open the box is this box is already open. I purchased this from my local hobby store, D&Me Hobbies, here in Topeka, Kansas. And I did not want the battery and the charger, so they took that out and gave me a discount on the truck. So it is already open. But we didn't take anything but the battery and the charger out. So let's go ahead and cut the tape that they taped back over that with, so it didn't fall out. And let's see what we've got. We've got some spare parts. We've got the FlySky radio. We've got the truck. We've got the stickers and instructions, and then last but certainly not least, we have the garage. So you can take this box apart and it turns into a Ripley's Auto Finishing Repair. You can see right there. So that's quite interesting. We do have a large bag of stuff here. You can see we do have the additional overdrive gear. Looks like maybe a battery tray, some light covers, and then we have the FlySky radio. This is leaps and bounds better than the last radio I got with the Ecto. Much more refined. It fits in the hand way easier. It is a way better radio. Then we've got a bunch of stickers and the owner's manual here. It looks like there's a lot of cool stickers on here. Speed limit signs, years, things of that nature. And then let's get into the truck itself. So the truck is protected by this cardboard piece for one very important reason, and that's because it has this sweet light bar on it. So it does, I don't know if it's licensed by KC or not, but it does have a light bar from the factory with KC lights installed in it. Obviously, there's no lights in there in the pods, but the pods do look like you can slide some LEDs in there, so these could be functional light pods, which is really, really cool. And inside of the package, it does have the light pod plastic clear lenses, so if you do pop those off there, put the LEDs, and they are functional. This body right here is really the only reason that I bought this truck outside of the IFS, because I just think it looks really, really cool. So it does have huge attention to detail for being a crawler slash trail truck. They're calling it a trail truck, but it's essentially the Ecto with IFS and probably a little shorter wheelbase and some smaller tires. So the truck was just sitting on this cardboard. I don't see anything leaking on it, so that's a plus. Set that over there. I can't get over the attention to detail. We have actual mirrors, we have a light bar, we have little light pods. These do look like they will house LED lights as well. There are some other details, such as the door handles and things of that nature, that is actually really cool. Now, the other thing that is interesting, or could be interesting about this body, is that the Ecto that I had acquired was the black Ecto, and it did have bronze paint on the back side of it. So it's actually painted on the outside. This blue color is painted on the outside of the body. And if you look at the inside, it's got this bronze paint. So as you scratch the blue, it actually looks like it's rusting. A natural look. Natural progression of most trucks is if you scratch the paint off, they start to surface rust. The metal does. Oh wow, I didn't even notice that. So the grille is actually plastic. It does have a sticker behind it with a radiator that looks pretty realistic. And then these headlight buckets here, they do have slots for lights as well. So you can put 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 lights in this thing and make it extremely loud or bright. Now that we've gotten the top off, we're really looking at this new design itself. So really from, I would say, here back, this is typical Ecto. So you have the trailing arms, and then you have your sway bar, you have your straight axle in the rear, and you have your Stealth X trans with the stock brushed motor. Not a whole lot different there. It does look like these wheels are two-piece wheels. The Ecto wheels were plastic and the tires were glued. They do have the name Method on them, so I don't know if they're licensed or not. And they do appear to come apart. You can see the screws in there holding themselves onto the wheel hub. And I assume that holds the two pieces together, and they have a clamp ring holding the tire on. They're class 1 tires, so 4.19 tires by 1.4 wide by the 1.9 hole for other wheels and stuff. Out of the box, these shocks feel really good. I don't have any problems with the Element shocks. I think they work really well. My issue with them is the spring rate is really high. And so you can actually swap out the spring cups, seats, whatever you want to call it, with a 3D printed one like I have on the website. You can download and print out mini T conversion on these shocks. Or you can just buy the Traxxas 2660s and put them on here as well. Or the 2661s or 2662s. Let's talk about from here forward, because that's really what's changed on this truck versus the Ecto. You have the steering servo up front, which is, I assume, is a reedy steering servo, just like on the Ecto. You have the new FlySky 2-in-1, the 2-in-1 ESC receiver combination. I assume that that's a 60 amp ESC. The unfortunate part about that is if you really want to utilize or get more out of it, you will have to replace the whole thing. So you could get something like a Fusion 2-in-1 anyway. Then it has the stock front winch bumper combination thing where you can supposedly take the winch off and put an actual winch there. I don't know. Not a huge fan. It sticks out, at least on the Ecto, it sticks out a long ways. It does come with a fair lead though, so if you want to remove the ESC, you can put a secondary servo there for a winch, and it will go through the fair lead. I am more or most interested in this independent front suspension setup. I have not actually seen this in person before. It does have a front locked diff. Most of the parts are plastic. There are some metal parts in there, but the A-arms themselves are plastic. I don't know what the other parts are. It looks like the steering assembly is metal. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it looks metal. Now immediately I can see some I don't want to say concerns, but I can see some limitations with this truck. So you can see that the steering angle is not the greatest. This will be a fantastic trail truck. It will not be a fantastic comp truck for this specific reason. The most you could get out of that is right there, because the tire is about to hit the upper A-arm. Now, you could redesign these A-arms potentially and address that issue. It would be more challenging, and you would have to use a different material because it would be a smaller material, so you'd have to use something stronger like metal. But it could be done. So you could do that. You could also potentially do some other things to make it better, but I think overall the intent for this truck is not to be a certified line killer. It is supposed to be a more realistic trail truck, because that's what it is. This would be something you would see in the wild in a 1-to-1 scale. For example, a lot of half-ton trucks, they have, like Ford specifically, have independent front suspension on their newer trucks, and they have a solid axle on the rear. Like I said, it's not meant to be a certified line killer. It's not meant to be a extremely capable truck. It's meant to replicate a 1-to-1 truck, and it's meant to be a trail truck. You go out and have fun with it. Doesn't mean that it can't do climbs, doesn't mean that it can't do extreme obstacles. It just means that it is going to be more of a class 1 truck than it is a class 2 or 3 truck. There's really not much more to look at here outside of just taking it out and running it. Let's do it. Just like that, we're back for the conclusion of this review. We apologize for the lack of video footage. Unfortunately, the camera did die while we were out recording, so you only got a very small window of footage, if you will. Again, we apologize for that. Let's go ahead and dive into the truck. This is going to be a long video, so we're going to try and keep this conclusion short. First things first, the electronics. So it is a Fly Sky radio with 2-in-1 receiver. What does that mean? If you want to replace the motor, the brushed motor, you will also have to replace the radio and the receiver. So it's not just one thing or the other. If you want to replace one thing, you have to replace it all. It does come with Dean's plugs, which is a little outdated. You will have to either get a converter or make a converter, buy a converter, or use Dean plugs batteries, which is atypical. The norm right now is XT60s, which is what this battery is. So this little yellow plug is a 60 amp plug. The electronics performed fine. I did notice that the steering servo did stop. Fortunately for us, I was able to turn it off, let it sit for a while, and turn it back on, and it did perform, or did start to function. Now, the reason that it probably stopped is because the BEC in this 2-in-1 ESC is only 3 amps, so it might have gotten hot or overloaded and blacked out. The truck overall is a great trail truck. It does lack a little bit of speed. Now, mine came set up in the wrong direction, so it was much faster in reverse than it was going forward. A simple switch of the wires, you can see the red goes into black for the motor and the red in the motor goes into black for ESC. Switching those around really helped that out, and it just reversed the rotation of the motor, thus making forward faster than reverse. Conceptually, this truck is really cool. Like I said, I think that it does perform really well on the trails, and I'm pretty satisfied with it. There are some obvious limitations out of the box. The biggest limitation out of the box is going to be these tires. You're going to want to get new tires as soon as possible. Now, these wheels are 2-piece wheels, so you should be able to put other 1.9 tires on there and not have any issues, but that's really the biggest drawback to the truck. Because the tires were less than adequate, they didn't really grip like you wanted them to. A good example of a better Class 1 tire would be these tires here on this red Jeep. They are Pitbull Rock Beasts. They're fantastic tires, and these General Grabbers are like rated a 1 out of 10 in my mind. Outside of that, it's essentially an Ecto. On the trail, you will notice that the rear axle, being a straight axle, does hang up on everything. 4.19s, they don't help. So if you had some 4.75 tires on here, it would be a lot better in terms of both the ability to go over obstacles easier, but also it would be better for breakover. So if you notice in the video, there's a couple major problems. Obviously, the tires are the first one. The second problem is going to be your breakover and other angles or attempted angles with these trailing arms. It is what it is. It's a trail truck. I don't expect it to be the best truck out there. Now, some of the other limitations are going to be your front bumper. As you can see, there are a lot of scuff marks, scrape marks on the front area in general. But if you look at the fair lead up here, it is really beat up. The bumper itself is really beat up. And that's one of the other big limitations of it, is removing that bumper and fair lead from the front, or putting a bigger set of tires on here to move them forward would help significantly. Some things that you need to know is that Element has proprietized a lot of their stuff, so their diffs, while they are machine diffs, if you do break them, they're not regular AR44 diffs. You have to buy the Element specific diffs. Same with the ring and pinion gears. Now, moving into the body did hold up well. It is kind of dusty. We do have some scrapes and scratches. You know, it's still in relatively good shape. You can see where the biggest amount of damage occurred was on the top section here, which is to be expected. Outside of that, it held up good. The KC lights didn't break. The mirrors didn't break. They're pretty malleable. I'm pretty satisfied with the truck for being a trail truck. I certainly wouldn't use it for anything else in terms of competitions or any type of hard lines or obstacles, things like that, because it's just not equipped to do those, unfortunately. However, if you want to go and hike a few miles and do some pretty typical bike trails or hiking trails, this would be one of the go-to trucks for that. You simply just throw a battery in it or take a couple of batteries with you and you're off to the races. These 1500 batteries lasted about 45 minutes with mostly being full throttle. The truck's trying to keep up with me walking, so it's not extremely fast, so be prepared for that. I did end up walking between 2 and 3 miles, and I did use 2 batteries during that time frame. Outside of that, you don't really need a powerful servo. What comes out of the box is really all you're going to need, with the exception of the tires. And you take it out of the box, you have fun with it. That's what this hobby's all about. It's having a good time, enjoying yourself, and enjoying nature. Certainly not the worst truck out there. Certainly not the best truck out there. Would I recommend buying it? If that's what you want, yes, get it. Outside of that, there's really nothing more to say. The IFS 2 is actually really, really cool to watch work. It works really well. As you can see in some of the footage, it's really cool to watch the different tires go through the different strokes. And so you can't really see that while you're walking around, but in the video, you can see it really well. We're gonna cut the video here. Thanks for making it this far. Feel free to like and subscribe so you get more updates from the channel. Huge shout out to our TABO Plus members. We really appreciate your support, and we hope you have a great day.